Thanks very much for inviting me along to speak on the TQBS podcast.
Good to have you here, Will.
I understand podcasts are the medium that the youths of today are listening to.
Yes, indeed.
Excellent. Well, time to join the 21st century then for myself.
Welcome.
Thank you. So, Rach, what do you want to talk about today?
Will, it would be really good to give our partners some ideas around how they can handle pushbacks when it comes to customers and the reasons why they don't want to migrate from NAV to Business Central SaaS. So it'd be good if you could give us an in-depth discussion into this, please, and how our partners can overcome it.
Okay, so that's a question, and it's one that we're seeing, I think, more and more. I'm frequently speaking with customers, partners, I should say, on a daily basis around this very specific issue. I mean, we're all excited, I think, by the migration opportunity, but I think it's fair to say it's moved a little bit slower than we kind of anticipated. And I think we could probably categorize the majority of pushbacks into one of 5 categories. Mm-hmm. Still today, I think one of the most common pushbacks is security. Who's got access to my data? How can unauthorized people log into my finance system? How safe is my data? Will it be there when we log on in the morning? And so that's kind of like point number 1. I think we see a lot of pushback around security. Quite frankly, I think it's less of an issue today than it was a year ago, way less than it was 5 years ago, and way less than it was 10 years ago. And I think a lot of that has to do with Microsoft being very much on the front foot in terms of their investments around security, the different levels of government recognized certification that they have. I mean, the way I see it is this: if the NHS, National Health Service, puts their data on the Microsoft cloud, and you think all the hoops that they have to jump through, why do you think your data would be treated any differently? And I think that every partner should have in their shortcuts, in their favorites, whether it's Edge, Internet Explorer, or even, dare I say, Google Chrome, you should have the Microsoft Trust Sensor shortcut put in there, because it's a great resource for help putting customers' mind at ease. So I think I'd probably still say security is still probably number 1. Then there's what we're starting to see is the debate between SaaS versus hosting. And I think we're almost seeing a 50-50 mix at this stage between those customers who want the flexibility of being able to access their solution, at different hours and through different locations, where hosting comes into play, as well as obviously SaaS. But also, I think there's that desire to maintain full control of the customer system, which is what you get if you have a hosted solution. I mean, for example, if you use One-Click Factory as your hosting, you basically maintain full control in terms of a unique code base for that customer. So the SaaS versus hosting challenge is one of control, and understanding why that customer wants to maintain control of their NAV or BC hosted environment. That is really key to drill into that. Quite frequently, there are misconceptions around the level of control you can have around your SaaS solution in terms of developing in extensions and so on and so forth. What I would say is this: if you look at the number of Business Central deployments now that integrate with other parts of the Microsoft cloud, whether it's, for example, Power BI, Power Apps, these are these are really, really compelling reasons to go to think SaaS first rather than hosting, because hosting isn't natively integrated with the common data service, whereas obviously the SaaS version is. Is that along the right track there for you, Rachel?
Yeah,
Excellent.
exactly. Yeah, really good.
Glad to be of assistance. So I think we got to point 2, didn't we?
Yes, that was point 2.
Oh wow! So another 3. So one thing we hear about SaaS a lot is these concerns around performance. One thing you undoubtedly have when you have an on-premise solution is full control of performance. You can tune the database, you can throw extra processors and memory and faster hard disks at your own server ticking away in the corner. What we've seen today from a performance perspective, or I should say, what we've seen today when it comes to objections around performance is that it's almost too much of a step into the unknown for the customer, which is we have to, as partners, we have to give our customers the right advice. If the customer is processing tens of thousands of invoice lines an hour, then maybe you should give some real consideration to setting up a test bed in terms of how that solution performs. It is versus this on-prem or even hosted version. So performance concerns are valid, but what I would say is this: is unless you're talking about substantial volumes, it's typically something that Microsoft are very, very reactive to from a support perspective. So where we've had instances of of noisy neighbors within the same tenant or the same SaaS tenant, is Microsoft will very quickly move you into a fresh instance. So it has taken time, to be honest, to see Microsoft react to some of the performance challenges. But the fact that they are reacting, I think, again, is very, very positive. And I would say this: we're seeing larger and larger deployments of Business Central SaaS every month. And as the number of users increases, the number of resources that Microsoft invests in from a pure infrastructure perspective increases as well. So that's number 4. Let's talk about the old. So that's number 3.
3.
Yeah, that's right. Just testing. I hadn't watched that, saw myself. So number 4, cost. Okay. Always make sure we're comparing apples with apples, as opposed to apples versus pears. We see when we do the calculations of total cost of ownership of consistently having to upgrade an on-premise solution and maintain that on-premise solution, plus the infrastructure that the customer needs to invest in. We see the return on investment in SaaS actually coming ever closer. Don't forget, once the customer is upgraded to Business Central on-premise, they're moving into the new modern support lifecycle, which basically means that every 2 years, at an absolute maximum, the customer needs to be investing in another on-premise upgrade. So if you look at the total cost of ownership of SaaS versus total cost of ownership, down. When you take into account some of the offers out there today, whether that's the BREP to CSP offer, which runs until June the 30th, 2021, or the standard 40% discount available for customers with an active enhancement plan. Once you take that SKU and that promotion into account, I really do struggle to understand why cost is not dealt with as part of that whole TCO. Now, we all know that upgrading and migrating does carry with it some cost, but the bottom line is this: particularly for those customers on unsupported versions of NAV, they need to be shifting, and there is going to be cost involved. We are seeing at this moment in time almost like a halfway a halfway house where customers are migrating to Business Central 14 or later, with a view to fully deploying on SaaS within a 1 or 2 year period. So again, that's something worth considering. And then finally, I would say that there's the whole complexity. Moving from on-prem to SaaS is not just it's just not a platform change. It's dealing with the complexity challenges that the customer believes that they'll have to then live with.
Yeah.
So the way I typically view that is turn it on its head, which is where you've got a fully managed solution, which will allow you, Mr. Customer or Mrs. Customer, sorry, I don't want to get #MeToo on me, is at the moment they're managing complexity in terms of from the infrastructure upwards from their on-premise deployment, or from the hosting platform upwards from the from a hosted perspective. Actually, SaaS is a simpler thing for them to manage. It's just different, and that's the key. But it also creates, going back to what I was talking about, Power Apps and Power BI, but it also creates huge opportunities for that customer to spend their time on more value-add functions, like investing time, effort, energy in Power BI, in Power Apps, in Power Automate, and indeed other elements of Dynamics 365. So I think that was the 5. Was that the 5 points?
Yep, that was 5 points.
Have I scored 10 out of 10?
Yeah, I'll give you a 10.
Hey,
yeah, some really good comebacks there that you covered off well. And
right.
I'm sure our partners will find it really useful.
Excellent.
To they have a bit of ammunition.
Yeah, brilliant. Let's load up the ammo pouches and get ready to roll, right?
Brilliant.
Thanks,
Will. Talk to you soon.
See you guys. Bye. Have you stopped?